You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Let's get to your understanding of how the global resets unfolded, what you're calling the plasma apocalypse, and the purpose that we see these resets, that it's pretty evident they seem to happen multiple times throughout our ancient past.
Yeah, everywhere I look, I see evidence for different types of resets happening. And at first, when I first started really studying eschatology, I thought there was just two, because I came from more of a Christian biblical background, where it basically says there's one that happens, that's the flood. That's the more popular one that people kind of know of and they're aware of. And people are like, yeah, the world flooded a long time ago. And I'm like, the world is still flooded. You need to look around. It's got an ocean. It's everywhere. Like, it's still here. It's just receded a bit, okay, but it's still here. But then there's the other one by fire that, isn't talked about as much, probably because that's the next one that I believe is on the way. So at first I was like, there's a reset by water, there's a reset by fire. But those are the big ones. Those are what I call the apocalypse, which is the uncovering of the world, where the firmament or the covering of this world uncovers. It moves, the sky falls, the firmament cracks open. That is the uncovering physically. I know there's a lot of people that internalize it and they're like, oh no, it's just a step, and it's an evolutionary step in our consciousness or whatever. That's fine. I believe that there's truth to all of those different levels of seeing the apocalypse. But I also like to really focus on the physical aspect, because I'm a physical being in a physical world, and I want to know the physical portion first. How am I going to actually physically experience these things? So one by water, one by fire. Those are the two main apocalypse. Atmospheric depressurization, where the firmament cracks open, and there's a lot of other dominoes that touches. In between those, we have other polarity flips. So the polarity in our world can still flip around without the atmosphere depressurizing, or without the firmament breaking open. There's other factors that contribute to those happening, and it takes a lot longer for that to happen. But during these other polarity shifts, we still have these little mini cataclysms, which are in between the apocalyptic cycles. So you have little mini cataclysms that happen, which are little reset events that tend to affect a large portion of the world, but they don't have to be worldwide. And a lot of these, they'll have little symptoms of the apocalypse, like major earthquakes and liquefaction and mud floods and civilizations disappearing. A great example for this, one of my favorite ones, is the Dark Ages. And all of the things that are associated with the Dark Ages are indicative of a cataclysm, of a polarity reversal, where the atmosphere was electrically amplified and it changed people's style of dress. It changed their architecture. They were forced to adapt to a new environment that was under an atmosphere that was electrically charged and amplified. And we also see during the Dark Ages all of these discussions and talks, historic records within bestiaries that were written by monks that swore to God to tell the truth. They talked about unicorns and monsters and cryptids and all these weird creatures that existed during the Dark Ages, as well as the tales of giants and gigantism being reintroduced, people fighting the giants.
You also mentioned that there is an expected upcoming possible reset by fire. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let's suppose that we have a cycle that's water and fire, and it goes back and forth between the water and fire. Let's just start there, right? If that's true, the evidence is here now that the last one to have happened was by water, that the oceans are manifest, right? So if that's true, and the oceans are worldwide evidence that the last cycle was water, and we became a water world, then naturally the next thing to happen is the oceans will be removed and the seas will be gone, and that fire will be the next one. This fire comes in two different forms. Fire in the ancient world it was the word light, really. And then fire became an implication, like a type of light, basically. So light was first. And then over time, the different words for light sometimes took on the form of a specific kind of light, which was fire, hot light that burns stuff, right? So it's an age of light, and it's an age. It's on the grand scheme of things, on the grand timeline, it's daytime for the earth. It is the day. It is the time of revealing, light being cast on things. It's also symbolic of, people's minds being open and truths being understood by many people and whatnot. But it is these cycles that go back and forth between the age of water and the age of fire. The fire comes down in the form of plasma from above. So I talked about that ionized hydrogen that swirls around our world. Whenever the magnetic barrier goes away, that magnetism that wraps around the dome of the world, it pushes plasma away. Plasma is afraid of it. You could say it's repelled by it. So plasma is repelled by a strong magnetic force, and the Earth's dome, as acting as like an electrical superconductor, is the strongest magnetic force that there is. And so it pushes out all of that plasma, keeps it at bay. But once that magnetic barrier hits a neutral point during a polarity shift, there will be no magnetism. There will be no Earth magnetism at all for a short time. That's the window that the cosmic plasma just outside of our world has to streak on down and undulate into this world as fiery serpents and wonderful snakes and all these different descriptions, and it sets things on fire. So many things, especially it'll be a lot drier if the oceans are removed. The oceans will be removed if the atmosphere depressurizes suddenly. We have rapid depressurization where, I don't know, let's just say I don't know how big the hole in the firmament would be. I'm still working on my own little guesstimates and stuff, but let's say you have like a 500-mile wide just hole open up in the dome, and then all of that atmospheric pressure, which is akin to a fluid, okay, it all escapes and it leaves. Archimedes' principle says that however much weight in fluid that is displaced and leaves our world will be equal to a new buoyant force from underneath that lifts objects up. And this is when this happens, people would perceive our world as suddenly experiencing zero gravity. For those that believe in gravity and the academic model, they would just see things, people, animals, objects, cars flying, floating around. And there would be a world storm that is also created because these winds would start swirling around as it all gets sucked up into the heavenly stargate or whatnot. And so any slight breeze is going to start to lift and move and direct all these things that are floating. The oceans are also no exception. They're going to be one of the main things that easily just floats up into the air. Any wave that begins, what happens is whenever this increased buoyancy kicks off, things don't just get yanked up into the sky. They slowly start to lose their weight, so that everything will start feeling lighter and lighter and lighter to the point where it starts to basically float. So waves out in the ocean, those waves that are building and rising, they'll just keep rising and rising and rising, and those just be walls of water that rise up into the heavens. They're going up higher and higher. Much of that water will get sucked out of that depressurization point in the sky, which is akin to like the ancient sky god Kronos eating his children and sucking everything up into his mouth and stuff. All that water will be drank by Kronos. It'll get sucked up and out, much of it. And it needs to be as well, because the oceans will be poisonous at that time. The oceans will be toxic and covered in red tide, and they'll be releasing all these nasty toxins into the atmosphere. So it'll be a good thing that the oceans are removed. The oceans will be reintroduced during the next cycle, but the oceans will be removed. That'll leave all of the stuff on the ground. The plasma comes in, it sets fire to major forests, and it'll be attracted to areas that electricity is naturally attracted to. So areas with high amounts of metal, like major cities and stuff, are a huge target for this type of electricity that comes down from the sky. And you'll have lots of fires the world across. You also have a different type of plasma that's terrestrial plasma.